Me now on the House of Speed hotline is Brian Munson, who covers Husker football for recruiting for Fox Sports Next and Big Red Report. Brian, thanks a lot for joining me, man. First question up. Let's start it off with Big Red Weekend. Now 9 commits for the 2014 season. What's your assessment of the recruiting class so far?
Going into Big Red Weekend, you wanted some sort of a direction to kind of come up. You really felt like there was a need for a guy to jump in and kind of get the ball rolling. I kind of felt all along that it was going to be maybe a DJ Foster, although I thought DJ Foster would carry out to some point in the season after an official visit or two. I really felt like he would take a trip down into the South and check some schools out. But pleasantly, very happy, I think all the Nebraska fans are, for him to go ahead and end his career during the Bigger Weekend. Or I thought Peyton Newell might be that guy in August, but it turned out it was Zach Darlington. And that was a position right there, a quarterback, after a couple of high targets for Nebraska came off the board early, that you really kind of look back at the board now and you go, well, it's either, Matthew Jordan, Zach Darlington. I go, and it had to be one of those two guys, otherwise you spin into another list of quarterbacks. So Nebraska gets that stimulus at the quarterback position the Friday before Big Red Weekend. They pick up a guy late that night in Trey Mosley. And then they kind of roll through Saturday, and they pick up 3 guys, 2 in-state guys, Nick Stoltenberg, DJ Foster, and then they get a guy that I think a lot of people kind of projected would get in that weekend in DeMornay Pearsonell. I think Nebraska's class is off and running. I kind of look at Jason Hall as a guy as to when, he'll determine he'll stay on the commitment list or jump off the list completely because of the Texas offer. I think that at some point he potentially might decommit. And I think the cornerback position is a very important part of this class. So at this point right now, I think they're looking very good. Not quite halfway done, but I think there'll be some more guys that fall before the start of fall camp.
Brian, let me ask you first about DJ Foster. You said you expected him to go down and possibly do some stuff in the Southeast, visit some schools down there. With a guy with that talent level, and obviously it's a big deal for Nebraska to recruit the backyard well. The guy with that talent level, why wouldn't he take that trip? Was he just that impressed with what he saw over Big Red Weekend?
Well, I think what it really came down to was he needed to differentiate the schools on his list. And, I think all the schools on his list are powerful. Georgia, Nebraska, UCLA, Missouri, you go, Florida. You think about some of those big offers that he had. And I think what he had to do is just say, look, all these places are going to, have some similarities, and some things are going to be better, some things are going to be worse. But when it comes down to it, there isn't another school that's in the same town of where I've lived, and there's not another school where my brother plays college football for. Mm-hmm. And I think it just really took some time. When I talked to him on Saturday after he committed, he basically said, look, there were all the tours. I've been on all the tours. I've seen games there. I really told the coaches, let me just kind of float around, let me think about some things, and let me kind of just figure out what I want to do. And I think that that's all he really needed was just a chance to catch up with his brother, see some other things, and then him just to determine that, hey, look, why am I going ahead and prolonging this thing? Let's just go ahead and get it over right now. So I thought ultimately DJ Foster would end up a Husker. I just thought it would take a little bit more time. But good for the Huskers if they get him on board now.
Talking with Brian Munson, covers Husker football recruiting for Fox Sports Next and Big Red Report. Brian, it's interesting you bring that up because, I don't know, I think there's always 2 schools of thought when it comes to recruiting from the kid's perspective. You talk about DJ Foster just kind of wanting to get it over with. I think there's that other perspective that it's great to be wined and dined, but is it just that recruiting's so high anxiety and there's so much that comes along with it that for a guy like DJ Foster, he knows he wants to be at Nebraska, just commit and move on and get it over with. Is there a lot of that you were seeing nationwide?
Actually, there's been kind of an uptick, and I don't have the numbers really to back it up about the players that have been coming off the board earlier and earlier every year. I think it really supports a couple different trains of thought. First is, when will the NCAA look into the possibility of these recruits being able to take some official visits during the summer?
Thank you.
If they want to go ahead and commit earlier. And the next thing is, when does an early signing period become a reality for football? And I think that both those things kind of, the numbers supported right now that some kids want to get this done. They don't want to have the recruiting hanging over their heads while they're going through their senior year, whether it's a balance of athletics or academics or whatever, it is something that needs to be managed, and a lot of people just want to dedicate their time to getting back to school and just enjoying their senior year.
We're talking with Brian Munson, covers Husker football recruiting for Fox Sports Next and Big Red Report. Brian, when looking through this commit list for the 2014 class, I look at DeMornay Pearson L., the athlete out of Alexandria, Virginia. I guess conventional wisdom says slot receiver, or where do you see him going?
I do see him as a receiver. His film indicates to me that he's the kind of guy that can do a number of different things for Nebraska. He lines up as a running back. He lines up as a slot guy. He actually has a really good highlight film on YouTube of him just playing defense. I mean, he had 2 separate highlight videos for his junior year, and that'll give you some idea about how much of an impact this guy has on the field at any given time, regardless who has the football or not. I think that he's the kind of player that Nebraska's really starting to identify themselves with when it goes up there to trying to find those 5'11", 6', 6'1" guys, the guys that are the Jamal Turner, Kenny Bell types, that have some speed, that have a lot of mobility, have playmaking ability, I guess is what I really am trying to get towards.
Yeah.
And can really do a lot of different things for them with the football. And I think that the true X, the guy, the Quincy and Nunwas, the Maurice Purifies of the world, that role is not necessarily going anywhere. That I think that role still has a place in the Nebraska offense. But I think you're starting to see having 2 to 3 of these Pearson L type players to every one of the true X kind of guys in Lincoln.
Sticking with Pearson L, any chance that you see that he could be a kick returner, punt returner type player?
I think Pearson L does have that playmaking ability where you do that. The one guy I think that's on the commitment list right now that could figure into that kick return, punt return role is going to be Trey Mosley from Pflugerville, Texas, from Hendrickson High School. Watch his film a little bit, and he does some stuff. In Pflugerville, living down here in Dallas, kind of give some background, Hendrickson High School down in Pflugerville is some good football. They play some of the best football out of that Central Texas region. Pflugerville is just north of Austin, right in the middle of Texas. And Trey Mosley does some things with the football that was very similar to Drake Martinez last year, and kind of how laughable some of his highlights were because he'd pick up the football, after it's kind of rolling dead, nobody wanted to touch it, he'd pick it up and just run through like 11 guys going the other way. Trey Mosley had some very similar highlights where teams were bearing down on him, and he'd pick up a rolling ball and just kind of emerged through a crowd and showed very good speed and elusiveness. And he's the kind of guy I think also that, is going to be a difference maker at that cornerback position. I think he plays a lot bigger than that 5'10", 170 pound height weight says right now. I think he's the kind of guy that with the long arms and long high leaping ability, he plays a lot bigger than 5'10".
But Brian, he's a 2-star recruit. Isn't that bad? I feel like Rivals tells me things are bad. I don't get it.
We've got a guy down there in Central Texas, Kevin Flaherty for us, that we've worked very closely with. And 7-on-7 is a huge thing in the state of Texas. And when he noticed that Trey Mosley was off the board and committed to Nebraska, he said that he flat out loved the pickup. This is a guy that covers Texas recruiting, for a living. And he said that he saw him a ton this spring through summer 7-on-7, and that he was a heck of a player. He actually wrote me some stats. I think through 7 games that he saw him in 7-on-7, that he had like 5 interceptions, he said, which was just ridiculous. So I think Nebraska did their homework just fine in going and grabbing a guy like that. Plus, he can't teach speed, and a 4.43 is pretty impressive.
It absolutely is. Obviously, I'm just messing with you. I think I can't stand the stars thing. I think it only got famous because it's easy to understand, not because it's right. Talking with Brian Munson, who covers Husker football recruiting for Fox Sports Next and Big Red Report. Brian, that with that lack of stars, because there are no 4-star or 5-star recruits committed for the 2014 class out of the 9, mostly 3 stars, then Mosley the 2-star, and of course the kicker Drew Brown out of Carroll, Texas, the 15-year younger brother of Chris Brown. What would you tell people who are worried about maybe quote unquote not elite talent coming to Nebraska thus far on that commit list? I
don't think I necessarily. I'm with you. I don't buy a lot into the stars. I think it's a way for people to easily understand how a team generally did when it comes to team rankings in comparison to other teams. But I don't get caught up all that much in it. I like to look at, basically, where some other guys have some other offers from, how guys were kind of. I definitely look at the film. Number one, I trust Nebraska's assessment when they make an offer, but I love to watch the film and kind of validate that and see how the guy looks. But I generally look at Nebraska's ability to go ahead and grab these guys from all over the nation and still understand that Nebraska has that appeal to them when it goes to going and getting a guy like Zach Darlington away from Ohio State. And trust me, he got away from Ohio State. A lot of people don't believe he had a committable offer. He definitely had a committable offer to Ohio State. And you look at a guy, I can't remember who the last recruit was that Nebraska's ever received out of Virginia. And that appeal of going out there and how that Big Ten footprint is spreading out, and potentially picking up, some additional people out there that Nebraska probably wouldn't have gotten if they were still in the Big 12. And Nebraska can still dip into Texas, going down there to get Drew Brown, obviously legacy guy, but going down there to get Trey Mosley. I think what it comes down to is that Nebraska isn't all that concerned about all-out stars. There's a profile that both when he's looking at, and it goes beyond the football field. It includes the classroom. It includes talking to guidance counselors and teachers and understanding how the character is on a kid, because they don't want to get a troublemaker up to Lincoln. And I trust that Nebraska is doing the right thing. I think that the character assessment and all that good stuff goes into it, and I think I feel really good about what Nebraska is doing right now when it comes to recruiting.
Talking with Brian Munson, who covers Husker football recruiting for Fox Sports Next and Big Red Report. Brian, when looking at how Zach Darlington was recruited, that he went down to they go down to Florida. Tim Beck recruits him. How instrumental and how big of a factor does Tim Beck in his offense play in landing these types of guys?
I think it's huge. First of all, Tim Beck can show this transformation of an offense while he's been the offensive coordinator in Nebraska. He can show how the guys look different, how they play different, and he can obviously point the finger at how instrumental he's been in going ahead and go up there and putting that offense in place. Now, I think it's a vision. I think it's a combined vision of what I think Bo Pelini sees as being a very complicated defense or offense, to stop. But at the same time, Tim Beck is the one that's really driving that there, and I think it really starts with the guys that he's seeing at that quarterback position. I think nobody would really argue that there's a number of talented players, even behind Tim and Martinez, that are going to be trying to get that top spot when Martinez is gone in the spring. But you add a guy like Zach Darlington into the mix, and he doesn't just see the he doesn't really focus on the competition that's there. I mean, he sees an open spot, really combined with the guys that are all there, that I know they're all very talented. They're all former state champions in their own right from very, very good competitive states. He sees it still as an even playing field and a chance to go in there and throw down immediately and try to get that top spot. So definitely, I think a lot of what has to go on, especially with the success with Zach Darlington, leads back to what Tim Beck is doing there offensively in Nebraska.
He's Brian Munson. He covers Husker football recruiting for Big Red Report and Fox Sports Next. Brian, thanks a lot for hopping on with me, man. I appreciate it.
You bet. See ya.